Forbes published a scathing article about helium late last week outlining the findings of an investigation based on leaked documents, former employee testimony, and blockchain data. A lot of what they had to say and what they were insinuating after saying it was surprising to me, as they are supposed to be professional journalists. The article and air quotes investigation largely introduced no new information to anyone who has been involved in the helium community for any extended period of time. By agreeing to their first major critique, you would also have to insist that Amazon is a scam because Jeff Bezos' parents are billionaires. They make a few decent points regarding helium gaming and data usage, which I agree with, but I do not think neither support what they are insinuating with this article. Nevertheless, the magazine cover indicator is a real thing, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is its next great example. Let's take a look at the details in today's video. What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another video here on the Crypto Compound channel. Thank you guys so much for being here. I hope you guys are having a great day. Please hit that like and subscribe on the way in. It really helps support the channel. Today, we are going to be talking about the Forbes Enterprise Tech Daily cover that was entirely about helium at the end of last week. We are going to touch on some of the major points here that they make regarding helium being somewhat of a failed network, a broken promise, all sorts of pretty serious claims or accusations. Now, they tried to drive home some key points, such as the early founders and early supporters becoming rich, a pivot to the buzzing crypto market back in 2019. They touch on helium gaming, helium security tokens, and network earnings. Now, a lot of this I believe to be baseless claims. There are some things in here that are covered rather well, and they are certainly objectively true about the network, which is totally fine and I agree with. However, a lot of this stuff is either not new information or just completely baseless. We're also going to touch on Jeff Bezos's billionaire parents, as well as my favorite economic indicator known as the magazine cover indicator. Now, guys, before we jump into all of that, I do want to come over here and take a look at the charts. Helium is now approaching the $5 level at this moment. Right now, it is currently up about 8% at the recording of this video, performing particularly well this morning relative to the broader market. As you can see, we are approaching this critical resistance line that we have here. Continuing to form higher lows is very important right now. And as I mentioned in previous videos, this could be the beginning of the new trend here for helium.
It's a new trend.
Of course, this 50 EMA on the daily chart is the most critical line here that we will be looking at until we are able to overtake it. Testing this, I'm certain, will take a few tries until we really break through, but that is certainly going to be the most challenging level here in helium's near future. Guys, before we jump into the critiques of what they point out in the Forbes article, I want to talk about what I really find the most interesting, and even though it's not the most concrete market indicator, it is my favorite. It's called the magazine cover indicator. As you can see, it's highlighted here with years and years and years of examples. However, let me explain what it is as quickly as possible. So as you can see up here, the magazine cover indicator is somewhat of an irrelevant economic indicator with interesting correlations to extreme levels of market sentiment, which implies that the cover story on the more widely circulated magazines, particularly Times, Business Week, Forbes, and Fortune in the United States, can be a contrary indicator. Time magazine is a good example, as it generally captured the attention of the greatest number of people in its prime. People tend to buy more magazines when they are interested in the topic, and once everybody believes in a particular narrative, it is probably priced into the market and may even be about to reverse. No indicator is perfect, but we believe there is some merit to it, and it's certainly an interesting sociological phenomenon. There are decades and decades of this happening. As you can see, here is an interesting picture of all the different covers and the particular moments in time when they are posted, and there is a more detailed look at the specific dates here down below. I will link this in the description if you guys are interested and want to come take a look. But guys, as you can see, this is probably the greatest, most recent example. In 2009, the Time magazine cover was holding on for dear life. Obviously, this is at a point of near the end of the 2008 global recession that was fueled by the US housing market, and as you can see, holding on for dear life. This is an extremely bearish Time magazine cover. And as you can see, if you did in fact buy, let's say this example here is the Dow Jones Industrial Average. If you did buy the Dow Jones Industrial Average at that point, you almost would have went straight up for in this chart time frame is 2 years, but we all know what has happened since this date or this time period in 2009. There's been extremely positive price action for many, many years. So that is just one example of how this really works. And I think it is really interesting now that we see a Forbes article that is really bearish, highlighting some aspects of the Helium network. Now, according to this indicator, this is insinuating that the sentiment in the market is so widely spread that everyone already believes it. And it is very possible that since that it has made it to the level of a Forbes enterprise tech cover, that this trend likely may be over. Now, guys, I do want to be objective here. As we know, a few months ago, earlier in the year, the New York Times had a major article regarding Helium as well. And if you remember on this chart here, I always have highlighted when that was. And if we scroll back in time, we can see that the Helium New York Times cover was published right here around the $30 level for HNT. According to the magazine cover indicator, this very positive New York Times article would have been a bearish indicator. And if you in fact shorted HNT at these levels, that would have been extremely, extremely profitable. So guys, it has shown to be proven in global markets over decades. And clearly here, even in Helium's short history, it has also proven to hold some sort of merit in predicting the future direction of a particular asset. So guys, the first thing this article touches on is the wealth that was created for the founders and early supporters of the Helium network. As you can see here, there is a quote saying, "This thing was set up to enrich the founders and early supporters at the expense of everyday people. A review of hundreds of leaked internal documents, transaction data, and interviews with 5 former Helium employees suggests that as Helium insiders touted the decentralized spirit of the People's Network, they quietly amassed a majority of the tokens earned at the project's start, hoarding much of the wealth generated in its earliest and most lucrative days." They preface this information, which is not new whatsoever, as leaked internal documents, transaction data, and interviews with 5 former Helium employees. Now, it has been made extraordinarily clear that in the very early days of the Helium network, the earnings were going to be super high because there was the most amount of risk. No one knew if this would ever work, and there were the fewest amount of miners. Now, they make it seem as if the only people who benefited from this were insiders of Helium. However, one of my closest friends, the person who introduced me to Helium, started mining in the very early days of Helium, and he amassed a massive amount of HNT, almost a life-changing amount of Helium, even at today's price level. And he has no affiliation with Helium or any of the employees or he's not related to anybody in Helium. So it is unfair to make this claim that this was set up entirely to amass wealth for insiders and Helium employees. Of course, that is the case because those are the people that are closest to the network at its inception. And if they're willing to take that risk, they will get proportionally rewarded for that risk. That is like saying that Jeff Bezos' parents, who are now billionaires after investing in Amazon in 1995, that is like saying Amazon is a scam because his parents became billionaires from their investment and their involvement in Amazon in its early days. Now, of course, it's true that the insiders and the people closest to these projects or these companies when they begin do have the opportunity to invest and become very wealthy. However, that does not make anything like that a scam. Of course, it could end up being a scam, but as we can see here with Amazon, just because people close to a company or a project at its inception are enriched does not make it a scam. And they are trying to say that because Helium insiders and people close to Helium became wealthy, that somehow this was entirely set up for that purpose and Helium is somewhat of a fraud. I don't think that is a fair claim whatsoever. Now, later in the article, they mention the founding of Helium, how it has evolved into what it is today. And there's a sentence here that says, "But after 5 years of failed product launches powered by $50 million in investments, Helium pivoted to the buzz crypto market and the People's Network debuted in August 2019. Now, this is alluding to the fact that Helium did pivot pivot and was a private company working on its own enterprise technology to develop this type of network. However, they moved to a crypto incentive model because that was where there was incentive for people all around the world to build the network out themselves. Now, this type of incentive network would not be possible if it wasn't for earning crypto. So the way that they're making it seem like Helium jumped on the crypto bandwagon to sort of ride this wave, I don't think is fair to Helium. It really is a part of the reason why Helium works is because people are incentivized to build out the network themselves. Crypto simply didn't exist back in 2014 in this type of way for that to be possible. And once it was possible and they made that connection that sort of incentive could be made to people all around the world, that was when the pivot happened. I don't think it's fair to say that they sort of hopped on this just to ride out a crypto bull market and enrich themselves. Now, I do have to say this article does show a little bit of the other side, which I do appreciate. They do interview and talk about some positives here from people in the community, which I do appreciate. However, the overall tone of this article is very, very negative in terms of Helium and its intentions. Now, the article continues to move on to talking about Helium gaming. They refer to them as closet clusters or cheaters. Now, I think that is really shows how far separated these people are from the Helium network, because as far as I'm concerned, the most common way of referring to this is Helium gaming, and in no part of this article do they reference the word gaming or Helium gaming or gamers. So I think that is really important to note because it shows how far away these people are from Helium, and they're just writing this article because right now Helium is an easy target, and this sentiment has really now reached the top levels here in terms of people paying attention. Now, they go on to make this gaming sound as though Helium is in charge of it or Helium is operating the gaming. They even make a giant quote here saying, "We're not commenting on our internal business practices here." That is a quote that they reference being from Amir Helium, the CEO of Nova Labs. I don't think that these two things are talking about the same thing. This might be a quote from something else, but to put that in an area where they're talking about Helium cheaters or Helium gamers, and to make it almost sound like Amir is saying we're not going to comment on our internal business practices here, I think is unfair journalism, and it's making it sound like Amir is saying that he's not going to comment on whether the fact that Helium is running the gaming operations or not, which of course, I don't think there's a single piece of evidence that would support that is true. Look, of course, it's certainly possible that there could be an employee somewhere that has done the cheating, but of course, like any other industry or company or market, where there are ways for scammers or cheaters to take advantage of a network or a service, it is going to happen. And this is happening from large entities or other sorts of people, and Helium has been fighting this for a very long time. I don't think it is fair to sort of be twisting these quotes in a way that make it sound like Amir is not addressing the fact that he can't confirm that Helium employees are doing the gaming. Look, gaming is real. It is a problem. Helium has made extreme efforts to try and fix it. I don't think how they are framing this is fair to Amir or Helium or Nova Labs. Now, they go on to reference the Helium security token, or HST, which is objectively true. Helium security tokens are well known. They have been known from the very, very beginning. They used to be posted directly on the Helium website on the distribution of HNT. Now they can be found here in the Helium docs. And of course, as we can see here, security tokens account for 32% of all of the HNT distribution. This is not a secret. This has never been a secret. It is not fair to make it sound like this is some sort of behind the scenes operation that the Helium team is pulling over the eyes of everybody involved in the network. This is not new news. Everyone involved knows, or if they looked to find out how the distribution worked, they would have seen Helium security token accounting for approximately a third of Helium tokens being distributed. Now, the one fair point that they do make here a little bit lower is the average monthly earnings per Helium hotspot. As we know, with the extreme level of onboarding that happened between 2000 and today, there's been a astronomical decrease in the amount of HNT earned per hotspot. That is also not a secret. It is just a reality of the mechanism of how the network works. And being that we are in a crypto bear market, a crypto winter.
Winter is here.
and HNT has been battered down to the single digits. The earnings are not great right now, but we have to think long term, or at least people who believe in the network and believe that there is a utility here for the network do think long term. Of course, you're not going to be making $500 a month after plugging in a hotspot like you were back here, but over the long run, over the long term, as you accumulate HNT and the price appreciates, you certainly will have a return on your investment. However, again, this isn't a secret. It is a reality of the network objectively, which is fair for them to point out, but it's not fair for them to say that this is something that they caused or created or knew was going to happen, or cashed out all their HNT and now are just running the network the way it is now. It's not fair the way they are framing it. Now, guys, I do want to highlight this Bloomberg article that relates to having a long-term vision in terms of crypto investing, or in our case, Helium and HNT mining and investing. So this article references Pantera Capital seeking $1.25 billion for the second blockchain fund. And if we scroll down a little bit, there's an interesting quote here from Moorhead, which says, "We want to provide liquidity for people that are kind of giving up because we're still very bullish for the next 10 or 20 years." Now, I think this is important because I think this Forbes article is extremely short-sighted. It is not taking into the context of the Helium network and what it is building. It is the first of its kind, pioneering a completely new type of technology and network using a different incentive model that has never been tried and tested like it is with the Helium network before. So I think that this idea of moving from people who are giving up to people who see a longer term vision is really, really interesting. And obviously, Mr. Moorhead here is putting his money where his mouth is with a $1.2 billion fund that he is now raising money for in the blockchain space. So guys, let me know what you think down below. I am very curious to see your comments or any questions you may have. But thank you guys so much for being here, and thank you for watching until the end. Please hit that like and subscribe if you have not already. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. But just like that, this video is over, and I will see you next time.